And we are live. There we go. We are live here with L.L. Macrae, author of The Iron Crown and the Worlds of Lenaria. Thank you so much for coming on the channel. It has been a long time coming. I asked you in like October to come on the channel. It's been a while in the making. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so my name is Lauren. I apologize in advance. I have a bit of a cold, so my voice is a bit weird and nasally. But yeah, my name is Lauren. I'm an indie author. I write fantasy. I actually have 3 fantasy series, but only talk about 2 of them. The Iron Crown is the first book of one. Marauder is the first book of the other. I write under the name L.L. Macrae, but I was on. Thank you so much. So Andrew actually has the original version of Marauder. So I used to write under another name, which was L.L. McNeil, but I've now updated to Macrae. And Marauder now looks like this. I'm based in the UK. I write full time. I was a copywriter before an author, so I've basically been writing for a living for a long time. It's my fun thing to do, and it brings me great joy. And I'm very glad to be here. So thank you so much for the invitation.
Oh, absolutely. As soon as I read Iron Crown, I knew I had to have you here on the channel because I fell in love with those characters and I fell in love with the magic system. It's like nature-based dragons, which was just something I'd never seen before. I thought that was awesome. So in terms of the name and the change in the author name, you know, I know you've updated Marauder. Can you kind of tell people what you've added to Marauder and why?
Yeah. So if you are an author, I don't recommend you rewriting an old book. Just don't do it. Just leave it alone because it's such a hassle. But Marauder was my debut book. It was the first book I ever wrote. It was the first book I ever published. It was fun, but it was probably a little rough around the edges. You know, it was the first one. So, and I published that back in 2017, so quite a while ago. Now there's 4 books out in that series, the Lenaria series, and most people who read the second book did go on to read books 3 and 4, but not a lot of people went from book 1 to 2. So when I was changing my author name, I thought, why not rewrite Marauder and kind of bring it up to my current standard. Iron Crown is my latest book, which you said you love, which is great, and you know, lots of people seem to enjoy it. So I really wanted to give Marauder a new lick of paint, a new cover, a new author name, and rewrite it. So it's actually 30,000 words longer than the original. There are extra POVs, there's bonus scenes, the side characters are fleshed out a bit. The ending is less abrupt. So it's the same story. The original, it's basically the same beats. It's, you know, what you would expect. It's just better written, basically. And what I thought I was going to do was just, you know, change a couple of chapters from one POV to another character, or maybe stuff. And I thought it was going to take me 2 or 3 months. And then I ended up basically rewriting the entire thing from scratch in 9 months, which
from scratch.
Yeah, from scratch, pretty much. Yeah, there's very, I think maybe the first 2 chapters.
I didn't know that.
But other than that, it's all rewritten. And I don't recommend doing it because it really killed me kind of creatively, because I kind of obviously have 3 sequels out, so I have to make sure that whatever I change and add will fit, that I'm not giving away any spoilers, that I'm doing the foreshadowing well, that it's not too different to what people will read in the second book. So yeah, there was a few reasons for changing it. I think it was just a really good opportunity, because if I didn't rewrite it, I never was going to. So I kind of just took the opportunity to update it, and I love the new cover.
The new cover is good. I'll get it eventually. I remember I messaged you. I was just like, "Hey, do you have these yet?" And you were like, "No."
I know, but now I do, and now I do. But it's difficult because I have like a topsy-turvy approach. Like most indie authors will have like Amazon or Ingram print their paperbacks. So if they update anything, like a cover, it's available immediately. Whereas I have stock printed, like I do a proper print run of several hundred copies, which has its pros and cons. But it means that I had just ordered like 500 copies of book 2, and now I need to wait for them to sell before I can do a new print run with the updated cover, which, you know, is a bit of a pain. But at the time, I didn't realize lockdown was going to shut down all my events for 2 years, and I would struggle to shift them as quickly as I've been used to. So they are coming, but the ebooks are all up to date and all pretty looking. So the ebooks.
You're also updating the audio, because I know this because I went to go buy the audiobook for book 3, and I was like, I can't find it.
Yeah.
So are you doing a new narrator?
No. So basically, I just wanted to have the same narrator re-record Marauder to match the second edition.
Okay.
So the extra, the POVs and what have you, because A, it's a better book. The second edition is better. And B, you know, people that buy the ebooks can do the whisper sync thing, and it wouldn't match if it was the original. So the stories for books 2, 3, and 4 are not changing, but the author name is. So she needs to re-record the opening credits to say written by Macrae, not McNeil.
Oh, that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay.
Exactly.
All
So
right.
they'll all be available like in one big bundle as soon as she's done with Marauder, which should be January, February time. Fingers crossed.
So you're gonna give all 4 books as 1 credit?
I was considering doing 3 as 1 credit.
3 is 1 credit.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
4,
I'm
5.
okay with that. That makes me a happy man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a lot of hours listening, so I think it's really good value. And then you don't need to worry about getting the sequels.
One of the things that you're good about, though, is you're good with character work, and so a lot of hours of listening doesn't bother me because the characters, like one of my favorites is, hold on, let me dig her out, is Amara. One of my favorites is the Sky Pirate Amara. I love Amara just because she's got this massive chip on her shoulder.
Yeah.
But there's also like unplumbed depths to her as well.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited because I was, like I said, I was going to go buy the audiobook for Amara because I wanted to continue because I enjoyed Palome.
Yeah.
And I loved, I read the second edition. I haven't actually read the original Marauder. I purchased it. Well, I mean, I might at some point give it a little sneak peek here and see what you changed.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of interesting. Kind of a side-by-side comparison.
Well, I mean, the thing is, if you're going back to it, at least you already like Marauder, so that's going to be fine. Whereas I'm kind of like the original isn't bad. It's not terrible. It's just not as good as I would like it to be. That's the thing. It's not like it's trash. But I'm just like, no, read the new one, the pretty one, because there's more to it and it's better and it's nicer and you'll enjoy it more. So
once you have all of the print run of the new covers, I completely plan on buying another signed set because I want them.
Thank you. You're too generous.
Oh, you're too generous to give me awesome stories. So you had mentioned that some people were liking the Iron Crown. And that kind of leads me wanting to talk about SPF BO 7 or SPFBO 7. Because that was when I discovered SPF BO was in your year. And then I since went back and read other books. And that's one of the reasons I picked up Iron Crown. I was pulling for it to win. How was that experience for you?
Really stressful. So it's actually, Marauder was actually in SPF BO 4 and was a semi-finalist. And I kind of got a taste of what the community was and what the competition was and meeting other authors. So I was like, right, as soon as I have another book that I can enter, I'm going to do it. And that obviously took until Iron Crown. But yeah, I was really hoping it would be a semi-finalist at least, because then at least I'm on the same level as my debut. I really was not expecting to be a finalist. You know, if you have any familiarity with the contest, you know that the judging teams are also different in what they like and what they don't like, and who gets to read it, and you know the other books in your group. So there's so much luck involved.
Right.
So you have to be really lucky to land with a group that happens to like the subgenre, happens to like your writing, and happens to like it more than the other books in their batch. So the chance of being a finalist is so slim. I don't think
300 books.
Yeah.
And we then get to be finalists.
I know. It's honestly, it blows my mind. And so I was over the moon to have been picked as a semi, and then when it was announced as the finalist, I like ran around like a headless chicken for the evening, and like ringing my boyfriend. I'm like, I'm a finalist, and like celebrating with ice cream. But it really was pretty good because, you know, you discovered Iron Crown because of this. Lots of other people discovered Iron Crown because of this, and although some people may have known me from the Lunaria books, this was like the first book in a brand new series. It was the first time people had seen me as Macrae as well. So I had a lot of people like discovering me for the first time because of that. And, you know, I'm forever grateful to have been picked because awesome books fly under the radar.
All the time. That's half of the reason my channel exists the way it does. Is I've just leaned heavily into promoting self-help. I just recorded my first traditional book review in probably 3 months.
Wow.
Like it's been a long time since I did a traditional book review. It's almost all been exclusively self-pub. And so one thing, so I kind of peeked in on or I sat in on an interview you did with my good buddy AR Witham a few months ago.
Yes.
And in that interview, you kind of talked about your writing process and how you just don't remember anything that you write. Yep. And what is that like? Because I know you're currently working on the second book of Iron Crown.
Yeah.
What is it like writing a book when you can barely remember the first?
Really difficult. Really, really, really difficult, because there's stuff that I put in the book and I'm like, this is really important. It's going to crop up again and again. And I'll get 50,000, 100,000 words into it. And it's like, I've completely forgotten about this or where I was going with that idea. You know, Dory from Finding Nemo?
Yeah.
My brain is literally like that. That was the character I connected with. I was like, oh my God, I'm just like her. Because honestly, I could pick like a random page in any of my books and be like, oh, this is interesting. I wonder where this goes, because I have no recollection of what happens. So I have a lot of notes, but then that can get really unwieldy. And I spend a lot of time like Control F looking for what I might have called a thing. Like I'm writing the sequel to Iron Crown right now, and I'd forgotten like the Inquisitor name, the one that's with Apollo. Like, couldn't remember I knew there was one with him, but couldn't remember what the name was, couldn't remember the appearance, couldn't remember the personality. So I have like Google Docs of various notes. So it could be like character notes, world building notes, or important plot stuff notes, or dragon spirits notes, you know, if I don't remember the name of a spirit or something like that. And there's just a lot of flicking backwards and forwards. And I have an author friend who works as kind of like an alpha reader as well, and she has a regular memory, so she tends to flag up stuff, you know, like, oh, weren't you going to say something about this, or it was different before, you know, things like that, and then I can double check. But
is that either, I'm going to say it's either Matar, Rosario, or Shorn. Did I get it?
No. I would love to. I admire all of those authors, but I don't have much of a working relationship with them, unfortunately. So it's just another indie author. She writes post-apocalypse, and I've just known her for 6-7 years.
Oh, nice.
We just shared our notes and our first drafts and cry and celebrate and everything together. So yeah.
When you're just sitting there, I've got to do how many edits?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Because you write really quickly.
Well, this is the thing. I used to write really quickly, but since rewriting Marauder, I've kind of crippled myself, and I can't. I just, whatever my productivity was like before up here, it's now down here. I used to do like 10,000 words a day. On a good day.
A lot.
Yeah.
I know some authors who are like, hey, 1,000 is like great.
Yeah, that's where I am now. 1,000 a day is great. And many days which is why the Shadowgate is like a year late. And
you know what? I would rather it be good than just rushed. Like, whenever it comes to deadlines, put it out when it's ready.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I can only imagine how much anxiety that can give an author to, like, feel the need to meet a deadline. But, I mean, technically, you put out a book last year, so you're good. It was your first book, but you put out a book.
I rewrote it, so I'm counting it as a whole new book. So, Yeah, I have consistently put out at least one book every year since 2017. I think in 2019 I did 6 books.
2019, you did 6 books?
Yeah, yeah, because I have an urban fantasy series as well that I wrote
Right,
as like
right.
a palate cleanser. It's not very good, but I wrote it and it was quite fun. And there was 4 books in that plus a novella, and then I think that was the year I wrote Amara as well.
Okay.
So yeah, I did all of those.
Amara's a
Um,
big book. It's not tiny.
no, 166,000 words is Amara. She's
It's
a
just
chunk.
shy of 600 pages. That's
Yeah, my favorite book that I've ever written so far, I think, even more so than The Iron Crown, but Shadowgate
really.
might be the new favorite, to be honest. There's some really
Oh.
cool stuff coming in book 2, really, really cool stuff. And I'm like, I just want to get it done and then people can see it. And then I'll be like, yes.
Well, have you finished the first draft of Shadowgate yet?
No.
So you're still working on first draft status.
Yeah, so Iron Crown, if you remember, was split into 3 parts.
Right.
Same with the Shadowgate, and I finished part 1,
Okay.
and I'm working on part 2 now. But it's going to be similar sort of length, so it's not like it's twice as long or anything crazy. It's just, you know, Iron Crown set the bar quite high. I mean, the SBFBO finalist thing was good. It's been more popular than Marauder has, to be fair, and more people asking me about Shadowgate than Lunaria. So I feel like there's more pressure with it, and I want to exceed the bar that I set for Iron Crown. It has to be better. And I think it will be. I think it has the makings to be really, really good. But again, it's extra pressure. And I'm like, it's not good enough. Will it be good enough? I'm okay with this one day. And then the next day I read a chapter and I'm like, nah, it's bland. Nothing happens. Nothing important is good. It's not exciting enough. So there's a lot of working through that. But once I get to the end of the first draft, then I know what I'm working with. It will be much better, I think. Right now, it's just trying to get the words on the page, which, as I said, I'm struggling with a little bit. So I'm waiting.
I've always heard that's the most important step is get it written first, and then you've got something like a big ball of clay that you can mold into what ends up being the final product.
Exactly. That's exactly how I'm doing the foundations now, and then I get to tweak it and make it exciting. But yeah, so once I think I'm hoping that I'm going to be done with the first draft end of January. And
that's
then
not far away.
It's not far away. And then February, March will be the edits and sending out the advanced copies, hopefully to release end of March. That's my current goal. But like you say, it'll be ready when it's ready. So if it takes an extra 3 weeks, 6 weeks, then it'll take that.
I'm just going to raise my hand for an advanced reader copy now.
You're definitely on the list. Definitely.
Yay. So one of the things I wanted to kind of touch on, and this is not one of the questions that because it just popped into my head. Iron Crown has one of my best sapphic relationships that I love ever, because it's Calidra and Giselle, right? Yeah, Calidra and Giselle. One of the things I remember talking about this all the way back in my review of Iron Crown is where they each have shortcomings. The other one kind of steps in and reinforces it. And there, it's not one of those, there's a lot of kissing and there's a lot of petting and there's a lot of touching and ooh. It's not that. It's very much just 2 adults loving and reinforcing each other so completely.
Yeah.
And I just kind of wanted to, if you recall, what kind of went into making that relationship so dynamic?
Well, thank you. Firstly, I'm not very big on romance. I don't read much of it. I certainly can't write it. So I tip my hat off to all the romance authors who are absolutely killing that genre. So I never wanted to do like a person A meets person B and that kind of dynamic. I wanted established relationships. Like even Apollo is already married and has a kid, so he's quite far ahead in that. It's not like the will they, won't they kind of tension, because I wouldn't be very good at that. So I try to look at dynamics that I find interesting and relationships that I think are strong, that aren't always roses on the surface, because no one is.
Right.
I mean, I'm in a really strong relationship, but we still fight occasionally.
Trust me, I've been in the same relationship for the last 10 years, married, 2 kids. I understand.
Oh my God, for the kids as well, yeah. So yeah, I wanted to do something that was, already established. So the problems that they have are a bit more kind of grounded, I suppose. So, Giselle, it's not really a spoiler, but Giselle has like a curse, and Khalidra really helps her through that. And their personalities had to be kind of almost opposites. So,
Right.
Khalidra comes across as very kind of um, aggressive and standoffish, but that comes from like deep fear and insecurity because of like the abusive childhood that she had. Whereas Giselle has had a really bubbly kind of comforting, family's always there for her, supporting her childhood. So she brings that to Khalidra. But in the same breath that on the surface, Giselle seems like the really bubbly, happy one, and Khalidra is like the really insecure one. But Giselle has a lot of insecurities as well, and a
Right.
lot of fears and a lot of doubts about herself. And they really kind of balance each other and are there for each other where they need to be. And I think they bring out the best in each other too. So Khalidra can be
Absolutely.
vulnerable, and Giselle can also not be the I'm fixing everything type person as well. She can, show her own fears and her own desires, and Khalidra is very accepting of that. So I definitely wanted to have a relationship that was strong and would remain strong throughout. There's no kind of drama or breakups or anything like that, or cheating or a new person appear. None of that. I just wanted to have a good, solid relationship, because that's the real stability in Khalidra, and she's a POV character, so I wanted to have that for her.
Yeah,
So
there's
yeah.
enough going on in that world that you don't need the extra tension
Oh my God, yes, exactly right.
from interpersonal tension. Because I mean, like dragons, spirits, war, you
Yeah,
know, Inquisition, all of that. Like, there's so much going on in Iron Crown that I feel like that would have just been a bit much. Because when you're with them, like they have their struggles, but
yes,
at the same time, they're still moving towards a goal
yeah,
of trying to get Jen to where Jen needs to go.
hmm
And of course, Kalidra's got to deal with her mother.
yeah,
I've never wanted to hit a character more. I
yeah.
mean, maybe. Okay, maybe like if we're talking like Realm of the Elderlings with Regal and stuff like that, like
Well,
I could punch Regal in the face.
yeah, so could I. I'll line up behind you as well, so I can take a swing at him too.
But
Um,
Kalidra's mom was a piece of work.
yeah, she really was. And like not to get too personal, but like I haven't had the greatest upbringing either, and I have dealt with figures who are like that. So I'm going to put that in a book. Of course I am. Like Khalidra, there's so much of me in her, except that
Mhm.
she's much more fight or flight. She's gonna fight, and I'm gonna run away. So it's really nice to kind of have a character who has that difficult dynamic and how they work through it, for better or worse, and how they can kind of grow and develop as a person because of that. And that does get explored a bit more in the second book as well. So there's more of that kind of interpersonal growth to come.
We've got a question from Tori Talks. Do you recommend starting with Marota or Iron Crown for somebody new to your work?
Right now, I would say either. It kind of depends if you would prefer your fantasy with a bit more of like a steampunk flavor with the airships and the sky pirates that you get in Lunaria, so Marauder, or if you prefer your fantasy a bit more classical, which I would say Iron Crown. It's a little bit darker. There are still like vengeful spirits and curses and magic, but it's much more what you would consider just regular epic fantasy. So depending on where you prefer. And if you like both, then maybe just flip a coin. If you want the next book ready to go, Lunaria has 4 out already. So if you want to wait or not as well.
We do have a question from Michael. Is the blue air in honor of Dory?
I like blue. I went blue on my 30th, and I've never looked back since. So it's kind of
I
a
went
cool.
gray on my 30th, and I've been unable to go back.
Oh yeah, I have so many greys in my roots. My camera's not that good, so you can't see it. So I need more blue. But yeah, it matches Dory too. So I'm gonna say yes.
Yeah, we've just got a lot of people saying hello.
Hi
And
everyone.
Kay loves your mug.
Oh yeah, my Dratini mug. Yeah, this is a birthday gift because blue dragons and Pokemon. So yeah, I'm a definite geek in that respect.
Speaking of dragons, I know dragons are your favorite creature to write,
Yeah.
but you do write some amazing griffins. Uh, griffins good enough to rival Tiago Abdallah's.
Yeah, we're Griffin buddies. We
I
really are.
know. So
It's
that's
great.
that's kind of why I was so surprised when I was watching your interview with AR and you were just like, "Hey, I prefer dragons," and I was like, "What?"
I know, I know. Dragons have been like my thing since I was probably 6 or 7 years old. I think I saw one in a video game, and from that point on, that was like my thing. And dinosaurs as well. I'm wearing a Jurassic Park T-shirt too because I love
Oh,
dinosaurs.
nice, nice. Yeah, my daughter's all about the dinosaurs right now. Like
Perfect.
there's a Netflix show called Gigantosaurus.
Oh,
Each
really?
episode's like 12 minutes long. It's cartoon. It's like the modern Land Before Time, but like more fun for toddlers.
Yeah, love it.
Less emotional damage and more just fun.
Absolutely. She has great taste. Um, but yeah, no, griffins are fun too. And it's it's nice to write dragons, but I'm also like, okay, well, it's fantasy. I can pick another creature. Let's go for griffins, and let's make them huge, and let's make them war griffins, and let's make them talk. And we get to explore a bit of that. Not so much in Iron Crown, but certainly more in the sequels as well. So if you like griffins too, then Iron Crown.
Yeah,
Um,
griffins are Iron Crown. Lunaria is dragons.
yes, yes,
Um,
absolutely.
and you've got like different tiers. Michael's actually asking the question. I'm going to ask in a second, so we'll pop that up on screen in a minute.
Mhm.
But you've got different tiers in Lunaria of like styles of dragon. Like as a dragon gets older,
Yes.
it grows and gets more powerful, and then like if it reaches a certain age, it basically becomes almost a god,
Yeah, absolutely.
which I think is really cool.
I love
But the question that Michael has, which I was about to ask you, is was your inspiration for dragon spirits,
Yeah.
if there was any?
So there's 4 books out in Lunaria, and I wanted to write a new series to give myself a tiny bit of a break. And because I write about dragons mostly, there had to be dragons in the new series, and I wanted them to be different to the Lunaria dragons. And I watched quite a lot of Studio Ghibli films.
Yes.
I love them. I love the mythology. I love the music. I love the art. I love how emotional it all is. And 2 of my favorites are, number 1 is Princess Mononoke, and
Mm-hmm.
I really like Spirited Away too. And I love the idea of being somewhere and there were spirits. So I think when Ashitaka is going through the forest, he sees the little kind of creepy but kind of cute forest spirits. I think they're called Kodomas, I think, but correct me if
I
I'm
haven't
wrong.
seen them in like 10 years.
But it
It's
was
been too
basically
long.
a sign that the forest is healthy, that these spirits are there. And I was like, that's really cool. And then in Spirited Away, you have like the spirit of this particular river. You have the spirit of this particular, like the radish spirit, the river spirit, and so on. And I'm like, well, what if I had spirits in my next series? Because I like the whole spirituality side of things. I'm not particularly religious, but I like the idea of, another world, a spirit world, something that can connect the kind of like the godlike creatures with what's going on everywhere. So I was like, okay, dragon spirits make sense. And then, with the whole Studio Ghibli influence with the nature spirits, which is something that I'm quite, I won't say passionate about, but I care for. I being out in a forest gives me joy, brings joy to my soul. So I was like, okay, well, how about if I could try and get that kind of feeling for these certain places? So you then have a dragon spirit appearing wherever there's an abundance of life in a forest or a lake, or there's an abundance of a certain material, hence iron. But yeah, that was kind of literally the core concept that I built the entire plot around. It was just a cool idea. What if dragon spirits? And then, well, how would they form and where would they form? And well, what would be their conflict? And then I'm like, well, if they're spirits of life, you've got to have spirits of death. And then it kind of, you kind of build it that way. Which is what I do. I like to start with the world building anyway. So that's it. It worked perfectly for me.
Yeah, we've got a lot of studio. I've always said Ghibli, but I also hear people say Ghibli. I
I
don't know
don't
which one it is.
I don't know. I say Ghibli, but I can say Ghibli if people prefer.
No. That it's just one of those things where like it just you say it how you say it.
Yeah, but they're
Um,
fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. Highly recommend.
I remember the first time I saw Princess Mononoke. I remember I was in, I don't know if you had Borders bookstores in the UK, but it was probably the early 90s. And I was just sitting there in the bookstore and they had like this giant like box TV, like
Wow.
the old school one, and it was just playing Princess Mononoke. And I just remember sitting there watching it. It was awesome.
That's amazing.
Spirited Away and Howl's Moving Castle are also two
Mm-hmm.
some of the ones that I really love. I love Howl's Moving Castle.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Calcifer is the best. I love
I was
Calcifer.
just about to say the Talking Flame. His name had escaped me, but yeah,
Yeah.
Calcifer is
Yeah.
awesome. So with Lunaria, you've got a lot of characters. Each book has their own character name. You've got Issa, Maroda, Amara, and Palome. And I've read Palome. I need to read Amara still. Chris got ahead of me, fictional escapist, that little rascal.
Oh yeah.
But what do you have, like, in each of your worlds, who's your favorite character to write? And I guess is what I'm trying to get around to.
Amara, honestly, Amara. I love her to pieces. She is like the person I want to be, but without the criminality aspect of, being a sky pirate. She's the one that she's very kind of clear in what her goals are and what she wants to do, and she will just go for them, and she doesn't care what anybody thinks. She tends to be a lot of people's favorite character. And I think
she's very assertive.
Yeah, she is. She kind of goes for it, but she's not like super aggressive. She's, she'll defend herself if need be, but she really doesn't care what you think. So she's never trying to impress anybody. She's just, this is what I'm doing. Come or don't come. That kind of thing. So I have so much fun writing her. She's definitely my favorite. Although I will say that Princess Issa is kind of a close second, and they spend a lot of time together in books. Certainly in book 4. I can't remember if it's in book 3 as well. But they're quite a crazy duo when they get together. So I find that very fun.
Yeah, so where I'm currently at in Palome with Issa is Issa's just now starting to kind of become an actionable character.
Yes.
Where things are starting to happen with Issa. And kind of in Maroda, you're introduced to Issa and you're like, oh, that's a cool character. Yeah. And then you get to see her kind of get pulled further into the intrigue and the action and everything that's going on. So I'm really enjoying that. What about with the Iron Crown?
So you're probably not going to like this answer, but there's a new character that's introduced in book 2. He's a new POV.
Oh, you told me something about this, but I don't quite remember.
I'm really, really, really liking him. He is so Celise is the priestess, like the warrior priestess in Iron Crown, and she was part of a war band before she became a priestess. So she was basically a pirate, and it's her brother. And I really, really like him for similar reasons to Amara. But equally, I really like Khalidra.
Okay.
I think there is a lot of depth to her that people maybe don't see or don't realize is there from the first book, but we get to go a lot deeper into that in the second book, which is quite fun. And because I'm cheating, Apollo as well, because Apollo is just the love.
Apollo is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I still need to read the Citron Key. I do need to read Citron Key still.
No worries.
I'll get there. I'll get there. I got all of this.
Yeah. You have so many books to read. Like I'm constantly impressed with how many books you get through on a given month. Despite moving house, despite having kids, despite having work, it's very impressive.
It's been an interesting year. I'm planning on cutting back a little bit next year because I'm gonna hit probably 210 this year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's been a bit on the wild side.
Yeah, it's amazing though, because think about how many worlds you get to experience and discover, and
exactly. I love it. Especially when you fall in love with a series. Now, your third series that you don't talk about a lot. You keep saying it's bad. Let's talk about it a little bit. Why don't you try and tell it to people who are watching?
Okay, so my love is epic fantasy, but I've always had this kind of desire to write something urban fantasy because I love the whole idea of like hidden world within our own world. That's fun escapism for me. So this series is called the Kuzlo Saga. and it's about a group of people who live in a fictional town just outside London, and they protect the UK from demons. There's lots of other worlds that touch ours, and they are a group of different supernatural creatures. You've got a genie, there's an enchantress, there's shapeshifters, there's elementals. There's a woman who's the daughter of the Dragon Queen, and they all have like personality clashes, and they're all there to like attack demons. So it's kind of like a demon of the week type vibe for each book, but there is an overarching story. So if you like kind of Buffy, Charmed, Supernatural, that kind of cheesy,
I love those.
That's what it's about basically. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. They're quite short. You know, I think each book is only like 60, 70,000 words. And you've got the main character. She can materialize a sword out of thin air. She's got wings. She's, you know, her only purpose is to kill demons. But it's fun. It's just not, it's more like popcorn reading rather than this is really.
You know what? Good palate cleanser popcorn books are fantastic. I'm always looking for a new series, so you can expect me to be placing another order with you here in the next couple of months, because you use some of my favorite TV shows. I loved Charmed growing up. I loved Buffy. I loved Angel. I loved Supernatural.
Yeah.
Like those, you just sold me on that series.
Well, I'm glad. It was an idea I think I had when I was like 13, 14 years old, and I was like, you know what? Let's give it a go. That one is only on Amazon, so the ebooks and the paperbacks are on Amazon, not through me. And I'm not updating it to Macrae or anything. I've just left it there. So
I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna buy them. I'm gonna read it. It's going on the wish list right after this live show, just so I don't forget.
Oh, thank you. I mean, like it's not bad. It's just not. It's just not.
It's not what you love to write.
Yeah, it's not what I love to write. No, I did it just because I was getting very bogged down with all of the epic fantasy and huge casts and magic systems and world building and stuff. And I'm like, let's just do something fun and silly, but not shout out about it, because some people will read that and be like, huh, this woman has no idea what she's writing about. I'm not going to bother with Iron Crown. So it's kind of like it's almost like an old pen name of mine now, kind of thing. So,
well, Fazelia Reed says that sounds amazing. Why don't you like it? Which you just answered.
Oh, so, thank you.
That sounds good to me. Speaking of, with your love for pirates, have you considered writing nautical?
I would really.
Or even steampunk airship. Just go full on into the airship.
Yeah, I would really, really like to. I think to do that properly, I would probably need to do a bit more justice and a bit more research into like how a boat works. Because I'm very vague with the details in Lunaria, because that's not important. The important thing is what Amara's doing and, you know, the magical weapons and stuff. So yeah, I'm currently in the outlining, drafting, note-taking stage of a new series that might kind of scratch that itch, but I want to get some books finished before I do that.
That's all I needed to hear. I don't even care.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't. Well, actually, I do dance on camera quite a bit, so I'm just gonna give everybody a little bit of that, because like I was reading the Bone Ships this month, and I was like, you know, who would have loved to have write something like that? Yeah. Lauren would have loved to write something like this, because it's dragons, it's bones, and it's awesome.
I think I have the audiobook of the first one that I really need to get to. That, and didn't Chris Wooding have an airship series? Something?
Yes, that is. Hold on. Right there.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, I have that as well. So I need to read both of those, I think, to really determine if I'm going to go in that direction. But it would be fun. I think it would be a lot of fun. Just have lots of adventures. And I like to write adventurous stories. That's kind of the core of what I write. So,
well, I mean, getting tongue-tied. That's kind of why I read. Is I read to have adventures. I read to discover new characters. Mm-hmm. Anybody who just hopped into the live show is watching me blow raspberries at the camera. So you mentioned that you've had ideas since you were 13 or 14. So why did you decide to start writing? Like what made you take the leap? Like what was that initial spark? Because I know you said you've been doing writing in one capacity or another for a long time professionally, but like the shift.
Yeah, so I grew up an only child. So I was always in my own imaginary world, you know, entertain myself. And I used to doodle a lot. So I would draw out my stories, and they were never people. It was always animal based. So usually foxes or wolves, and occasionally dragons. And I would just do the stories because I would honestly get like the A4 sheets of white printer paper, and I would get that for my birthdays and for Christmas, and just draw out my stories. And I can't remember when I made the shift. I think it probably when I realized that creative writing was an actual thing I could do at school. I was terrible at it, but I really enjoyed it. And then I think I started doing fan fiction about 12 or 13 years old, because I didn't have a huge amount of confidence in my own stories. Plus, I could never finish them. It was always like an idea and 10 chapters, and then I would run out of steam. Whereas fan fiction was like an already developed world. So I think
you started the fan fiction route.
Sorry?
Did you start the fan fiction route?
Yeah, a little bit. Like I never published anything, but I wrote lots of stories in various like.
I know a lot of people who started that way. So that seems a good way.
You get guidelines with that kind of thing. You don't need to worry about developing characters. You just need to figure out how to write the stories and the conflict and exciting stuff and action scenes and all that kind of fun stuff.
But no romance.
Yeah, but no, it was never romance. Yeah, I was never interested. And then I did online role playing as well, but not like D&D where you're around a table and you're talking to each other. It was like written. So I would write like a 3,000
so like text based.
Yeah, so like thousands of words, and I probably wrote maybe 1.5 million words just through various role plays. Most of them started to turn original. And then I think I was like getting annoyed having to wait for people to reply with their characters. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna write my whole story from start to finish. And then I did like National Novel Writing Month to try and like help with the consistency.
NaNoWriMo? Is that
yes.
what you're talking about? Okay, NaNoWriMo.
Right. Yeah, it's brilliant.
I don't really know the acronym because I'm always seeing it on Twitter and it's NaNoWriMo, and so I'm just like, is this what we're discussing?
Yeah, Nano is brilliant. And one of the Nano years, I don't remember which year, 2013 or 14, that became Marauder that I published in 2017.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah, I actually used Nano to get 50,000 words of my first drafts done of each book every year. So that was brilliant. And yeah, I just kind of, I when people ask me questions like, oh, how do you spell this word? I can't tell you. I need to write it down and then I'll tell you. So writing is like my go-to to think and get all the fuzz out of my head and into stuff that makes sense. So I find it very almost cathartic. Like I feel kind of itchy if I don't write after a few days. So it's like my happy place. And that sounds really weird, but it is. It's my happy place.
I mean, I've been kicking the can of maybe I should start writing again. I did creative writing in high school as well. I still remember it was completely derivative of like Brendan Fraser's The Mummy and stuff like that, like thrillers and stuff like that with like pyramids and gunfights and
fun stuff.
I've never tried writing a fantasy story at all, and it's just it's something that like I just kind of sit in bed at night going, should I do it? Should I like at least take a stab at it and see what shakes loose? Yeah, it's just between reading, working, kids, it's justifying spending time and then taking time from those other endeavors.
Yeah.
So at some point I will at least probably sit down and attempt something. I don't know yet. I do play a lot of D&D, so I get a lot of to create characters.
You get a creative outlet there. But the thing is, you read so much. I think it's almost natural for you to have like your own ideas sparked from all of this media that you're consuming.
I used to do head fan fiction for Star Wars. Like that's how I would put myself to sleep. Is I would create a Jedi at night and then dream about that Jedi going through training and going out and fighting Sith and all that sort of stuff. Like, yeah, Tori is yelling at me. Blah, 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 blah. Excuses.
Yeah, do it.
All right. We do have a couple more questions.
Yeah.
Vasila wants to know, what genre would you love to try and write, but you find it intimidating?
I would love to do something in lit RPG.
Okay.
I really would, because I admire people that can do that. And I'm a big gamer. I love RPGs. So it's like, it would be perfect. Or if not, then something like progression fantasy, like Cradle. That would be
Love
amazing.
Cradle.
Yeah, I love it. It's just
I
the
think you could
idea.
nail a cultivation because Cradle is kind of progression and cultivation.
Yes.
And I think cultivation is just near enough to like where you can make a smooth transition into something like that.
Exactly. It
Well,
feels like a
because
stepping
it's weird because I've only read 3 cultivation series. I've read Reincarnation, Tao Wong's
stone.
series,
Yeah.
Thousand Li. There we go. And then I count Cradle as that as well.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would totally read you doing a cultivation series.
Yeah. I would like to, because I think epic is always where my heart's gonna lie. But if
Right,
there's like
absolutely.
adjacent-ish subgenres, then why not try? Maybe under a new name, so if it is terrible, then people don't know it's me.
Just you wearing some big over large sunglasses in the author photo.
Yeah, moustache. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, you can get one of those fake mustaches. Oh yeah, I like this. Michael wants to know what's your favorite fantasy series that you didn't write.
Oh
I'm
God.
gonna add that.
Yeah. So many. I have actually written some down because I knew this might come up and my mind would blank and I'd be like, I don't remember any books that I have written recently. So although it's urban, I really love Fonda Lee's Greenbone Saga.
Okay,
I adore that. I
it's one I
also,
still need to read.
yeah.
I
You
haven't gotten
haven't
to
read
it.
it?
I haven't gotten to it.
Oh my, okay, yeah.
I've got all 3 hardcovers right there.
Please, 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 please read it. You will not be disappointed. Honestly, I've never cried so much as in those books. Love it. I read recently We Men of Ash and Shadow by H.L.
Okay,
Tinsley.
H.L.
That was
Tinsley.
really
Yeah,
good. Wolf Eater by Anthony Mitchell.
I have it on
Um,
ebook. I haven't read it yet.
it was very, very good. Audiobook is fabulous. Also, I like, it's not fantasy, it's sci-fi, but Last Gifts of the Universe is my book of the year. I really connected with that in a big way.
Who's the
Um,
author on that one?
Rory August.
Okay, okay.
Really,
I've
really
heard
good.
the name, but
Yeah.
I can see the cover.
Yes, it's very good. And there's a cat in it who's amazing. So just read it. It's brilliant. And I really liked The Goblin Emperor by Catherine Addison.
Okay, I
I
have
tend
read that one. Sadly, that one did not resonate with me.
that's totally fine. I think it was the right book at the right time for me. And
Hmm.
I tend to gravitate to stories with underdog characters, people who are out of their depth, and like small scale stories in bigger worlds. So yes, there's this huge world going on and maybe wars and exciting stuff, but how is this one person affected by it? And I quite like that. So
Okay.
it just, I don't know, it clicked for whatever reason. I really like that too. Um, so yeah, those have been recent reads. Cradle, obviously, I love Cradle.
Are you up
Um,
to date on Cradle?
I am up to date on Cradle. Yes, yes, I'm very excited
One
for.
more,
Yeah.
one more,
Um,
and then it's all over. I read his other one too. His
House of Blades.
yeah,
Yeah,
I've read that trilogy as well. Well, I listened to the trilogy once he had it re-recorded by Travis.
yeah. I've listened to the first one. Really, really liked it. So I need to get to the 2 and 3, but I'll do that next year. But you can really see where the seeds of Cradle are in that.
Oh yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and it's
There's definitely seeds to Ethan Aurelius in that series.
yeah, absolutely. But I just love his world building. Oh, also, if you want something a bit different, Benedict Patrick's Yarns World series, really, really like those.
Yarn's
Um,
World.
yeah, the audios are fabulous. It's kind of like twisted fairy tale style, but very dark, and it's inspired, I think, by real fairy tales, but it's his own world and his own characters, and you've got like the Magpie King's Forest, and
That
also,
sounds fun.
yeah, it's a lot of fun.
It sounds
Really,
like it sounds a little whimsical.
yeah, a little bit, but dark and whimsical, if that's a thing, because that's what it is. I think the first book in that series is called They Mostly Come Out at Night, but you can read them in any order. But I would start with that one. Really, really good.
Okay.
Really good.
We're getting a whole bunch of Greenbone love and Cradle love.
Yes.
People updating where their progress is. Book 8. We've got they just keep getting better and better.
I do.
It's awesome. Would you ever consider writing in sci-fi?
I couldn't. I don't think I could do it justice because with fantasy, you can be really vague with your soft magic system.
You can do
And
that in a space opera.
can you
Like,
though,
well,
really?
like Star Wars, it's the will of the Force.
Okay, all right, yeah, fair enough.
That's super vague. Like, but before midichlorians, it was
Yeah.
all just it was the will of the Force, or it was the Force, and I can do this with the Force, and it's just getting in tune. It's a magic system. That's exactly what it is. It's a soft magic system until they then went and unsoft it.
Well, if I could do a space opera rather than a hard sci-fi with tech and reasons for how this works, because I could never do that. And if I could somehow figure out dragons in space, then I would. Then I would.
All you had to do was say dragons in space, and I want it. I want it. I need it. I'm gonna just write dragons in space right here.
But I'd really like to write something cozy and like not even necessarily middle grade, but just much lower stakes, really whimsical, really comforting. Lots of like potions and hexes and magic going wrong, and little dragon familiars, and something like really kind of sweet. I've had an idea kind of knocking around for a while, nothing concrete yet, but I would really like to do something like that as well. Just to get that kind of fun escapist vibe, because I'm not a grimdark writer. I don't write super dark stuff. Bad things happen, but it's not kind of the point of it. So I would really like to do something more chilled out without the huge stakes of epic fantasy. That would be like a dream project, I think. Dragons in space.
that could be really cool.
Yeah.
Michael thinks Dragon in Space is a great band name.
It would be, yeah. I'm amazed it's probably not already been taken.
I mean, who knows? It might already be taken.
I'm literally going to Google it.
So how many books do you have planned for not only Dragon Spirits, but I believe Lunaria is 6? I think I know that answer, but I don't know about Dragon Spirits.
Yeah, so Lunaria 6, there is a prequel novella as well, which, if you don't know, is Amara's backstory, how she became a sky pirate. I might do a few other novellas there for some of the other characters, but mainline books 6, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
Iron Crown is a trilogy. There is the potential for a spin-off duology following maybe the character that we get introduced to in the Shadowgate. Depends how popular the series is, but definitely just 3, plus again the spin-off novella, the Citrine Key, which you mentioned. Keeping it shorter this time.
Okay. I mean, hey, there is nothing wrong with a trilogy as long as you are happy with the story that has made it onto the page. That is really all that matters. I had a question and it just flew out of my brain.
Oh no.
Oh no. And I'm blank because I had it locked. Well, okay. Fazilla's gonna save me. Fazilla for the win.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say Griffins because I have put them in Dragon Spirits. Beyond that, maybe weirdly, maybe not, but Phoenixes. I really like the idea of Phoenixes.
Ooh, that would
so
be nice.
I recently launched a Patreon and I have an exclusive story there, and that's completely unrelated to my other stuff because I'm a glutton for punishment. And that's set in a world where phoenixes have been used as a power source by alchemists who basically transmute the phoenix flame into power, like a generator, essentially. So I really like the idea of like taking an existing creature like a dragon or a griffin or a phoenix and putting them in maybe not necessarily never seen before because someone's probably already done it, but like uncommon scenarios and just seeing how far I can push like the mythology and blend it with like my ideas. So I would say if not dragons, then griffins, and then if not griffins, then phoenixes. I think they're underused. So
do you like taking those elements and like pantsing it?
I do, yeah. I pants it, and then I run out of steam, and then I sit down and I plot what I can do from what I've started. But that's where the best ideas come from, when you just sit down and just blare.
Just blare.
Just blare. That's the technical term. Yeah, you just blare.
Bleh. Okay. So in terms of your writing process, speaking of pantsing, because I think this is the question that I had, are you a plotter or a pantser, or do you, like you said, do you pants and then you've got an idea that you can then, like we said earlier, mold and start plotting out story elements and things of that nature?
So I need some guidelines to start usually.
Okay.
So I will definitely plot out the opening, 5-10 chapters. What I tend to do is plot out like events. So for the Iron Crown, I know it starts with him in the forest, and then he meets Khalidra and Giselle, and then they go to the mainland, and then it kind of gets a bit fuzzy. But like that bit would have been plotted out, and then as I'm writing it, I'll work out what bit goes into which chapter. So chapter 1 will be this bit, chapter 2 will be that bit. And then I usually write until I hit a point where it's not fun, or it feels bland, or it feels like something exciting needs to happen. At which point I then tend to pants a bit. I tend to have like guidelines as far as like at some point this will happen, but I may not have everything plotted out between where we start and that thing happening. So I might plot like the first third of that, and then I'll pants it. And based on where I go when I pants it, I will go back and adjust the outline, and maybe more ideas have sprouted, and then I can kind of like follow that along. If I was just to pants it, I would run out of steam and I would write myself into a corner. So I kind of plot a bit to give me some guidelines, and then pants a bit, and then plot a bit to get me back on track. And I normally always have the ending plotted at least, so I know where I'm going. It's just how we get there is very much a kind of an organic experience, deciding as we go.
Well, that sounds like a really like kind of healthy, kind of dynamic way to let the story just kind of unfold, because like kind of the broad strokes, and then you kind of let it come to you organically, and then if you feel stuck, you can kind of work on it and go back between the two. I like that approach. That sounds fun and entertaining, and a way to keep writing fresh.
Yeah,
to me,
exactly.
Personally,
I don't like the idea of saying, well, I'm a plotter, so I can only ever write it. Like, okay, great if that works for you, but then as soon as it's not working for you, change it up. Who's going to know what's, if it helps you get to the end faster, that is a good thing. And I need to have like fresh ideas constantly. And quite often my subconscious works on things. So if I'm writing and I'm like, I'm not really sure how they get from A to B, I'll just write from B and continue. Very often in that writing beyond the point I was stuck, I'll be like, that's how I do that. And that's how I fix it. So just sitting there looking at a roadblock and thinking, I don't know what to do next. I could be stuck for weeks. So I try to also skip over any point that slows me down if I sit there and I don't know what to write, just to keep the motivation going. Because also, as I see my word count go up, my motivation goes up too. And it kind of becomes a bit of like a game, like,
you just kind of ramp up.
Exactly. It's like when you're grinding levels in a video game, it's like, well, I'm level 17 now, 3 more levels and I'll be 20. And that's a nice round number. So it's like, I'm 17,000 words. Let's just keep going to 20. And then you pants it to get there. And it's like, this was exciting. And now I'm beyond that. And let's keep writing. So I try and give myself dopamine rewards to keep me focused. It doesn't always work, but I try to.
I mean, do what you can. So before we wrap up, we do have a couple more questions in the comments section.
Mm-hmm.
And before we get to those questions, I am going to have your store linked down in the description box down below.
Thank you.
I will add that after we go off air. I don't want to do it while we're talking, because otherwise I'm just going to look super distracted on screen. And then, so people can go and buy your books and support you and just keep driving you to be awesome, because I love these stories.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we've got another question from Michael. How do you go about foreshadowing a story, and do you do it as you go, or do you add it in after? I believe is the condensed version of that question.
Both. So sometimes there are things that I know I want to foreshadow, like as I start. So I'll make a deliberate and conscious choice to include little hints and tips and throwaway lines. But sometimes I don't necessarily know, or sometimes I get to the end and I'm like, that would be really great if I can go back and thread that through. So, excuse me. That's why having the first draft done is such a good idea, because then you go back and you see what you've got, and then things will automatically appear as really good things to foreshadow. So I definitely have a few things to start with, but I'm always going back and rewriting, or not rewriting, but just like tweaking earlier chapters based on later chapters that I've written. The trick is to not do that too much, because then you'll be in an endless loop and you'll never
put out the book.
Yeah. But yeah, certainly I go in with things in mind, but inevitably the writing process will throw up other ideas that I can then go back and weave in, and it makes it look like I knew what I was doing all along when it was just absolutely not the case.
The magic of editing. And then our final question from Vasilia is, I am curious about the POVs that you might add. Do you plan them ahead, and do the characters then take on a life of their own?
Yes, I do plan the POVs. With the Iron Crown, I was very sure that I only wanted 3 at any one time. There are 4 in total, but 3 in part 1, and then a different 3 in part 2, and a different 3 in part 3. More than that would get overwhelming. But once I've kind of done my world building and I'm figuring out the characters that I will be writing for this story, like who has the most interesting story to tell, whose story do I want to write, it's quite clear which POVs I want to use. So that very rarely deviates. So I've never had a case of, I have had the case of side characters being more interesting, like Amara is probably slightly more interesting than Maroda. But yeah, I'm very kind of, this is who's going to tell the story. I might change them. So I might have originally planned a Fen chapter, but actually it makes more sense to be an Apollo chapter, for example, and I'll do that. But I always have my set 3 or 4. So that's my solid guideline that very rarely changes.
Fair enough. And with that said, we are here towards the end. Thank you so much for coming to talk to me while feeling under the weather. We have got some amazing out of order books here by L.L. Macrae, formerly known as L.L. McNeil.
Yeah.
Please check out her books. They are fantastic. They are character driven, and they are magical.
Thank you.
That said, guys, till next time, peace out.
Take care.
And then we've got to do the ever ending